Here's the final project that we'll be creating over the course of this chapter, rendered using Photoshop's Ray Trace Final setting. And there's all sorts of advanced lighting and scene effects going on here. We have light being cast in through the windows. We have light being cast through the ceiling, which is responsible for, among other things, this text on the ground here. We also have these extra models that I've added to the scene and placed directly on the bed. They're casting shadows. They've got gloss and shine settings, as we'll see later. We've got a more realistic reflection effect where the sky is concerned, because the sky is a real element in this 3D scene that is therefore being reflected into the walls. So we're not working with 2D layers and layer masks this time around. I've also added a reflectivity map to the walls so that not all portion of the walls are equally reflective. We've got this giant image light that's surrounding the entire scene. And then just to finish things off, we've got a hamburger inside of a picture frame. So that's what you have to look forward to. But we're going to start things off inside of this image here. It's called basebedroom.psd, and it's found inside the 16 ADV light folder. And we're going to start things off by turning off a few lights, specifically turning off those ceiling cans that we created in the previous chapter. And we're going to send light in through the windows. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the 3D panel by double-clicking on the thumbnail for this hotel room layer. And then I'm going to make sure that scene is active here inside the 3D panel, and I'm going to change the quality from Ray Trace Final, where this image is concerned, to interactive painting. And that way, obviously, we can get some work done here. I'm going to go ahead and twirl close the bedroom, that bedroom mesh, and I'm going to drop down to the ceiling cans, and I'm going to turn them all off for now. So if you're working along with me, turn all 4 of these lights off. So we're just working with that light bulb that's inside the lamp and nothing more. But we are going to add another infinite light coming in through the windows. Of course, this needs to be an infinite light because the object that's creating the light is the moon. So light is ostensibly reflecting off the sun onto the moon into the bedroom. The moon is sufficiently distant, even though it's not as far away as the sun, but it's sufficiently distant that it requires an infinite light. So I'll go ahead and bring that 3D panel back up. And let's add that infinite light by dropping down to the little page icon at the bottom of the panel, clicking on it, and then choosing New Infinite Light. Now, I'm going to name this infinite light Moonlight because that's the purpose that it serves. And then we need to modify the position of this light source. But first of all, I'm going to crank up the intensity like crazy. Since it's coming through those windows, I want it to be nice and bright. So I'm going to take the intensity value up to 7. So we'll have an awful lot of light being cast on the scene. Notice that the softness is set to 0%. I'm going to leave it that way. So we have some nice sharp edges where those window lights are concerned. All right, at this point, you might want to go ahead and back off of the scene a little bit. So I'm going to select my camera rotate tool here inside the 3D panel, and then I'll go up to my options bar, and because I've saved off those camera views in advance, I'll click on the view pop-up menu, and I'll go ahead and choose very wide angle, which is our most distant view at the moment. And you may notice that you're seeing a little bit of a window in the sky, which doesn't make any sense. It's as if the light is passing through, I suppose, this left window here onto the sky. That's actually just a trick of these 2D layers here, and we might as well turn them off for a moment. The ones that are called Reflection 1 and Reflection 2, go ahead and turn those guys off so we no longer have those 2D reflections. And if you want to, you can just go ahead and grab both of the layers, select one, then shift-click on the other, and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac in order to get rid of them. All right, let's figure out where in the world this infinite light is. I'm going to go ahead and select my light rotate tool, or one of my light tools anyway, and then I'll drop down to my little eye icon, and I can see that I'm just seeing my 3D axis. So I'll go ahead and turn on 3D light so I can see the various lights in the scene. Even though most of them are turned off, you can still see them as these little wireframe lights. And then I'll go ahead and click on this icon again and choose 3D selection so I can see where in the world my active moonlight infinite light is. And it's down here in the bottom right portion of the scene, shining upward through the floor. That, of course, is no good whatsoever to me. I need it to come pretty much exactly the opposite direction. So I'm going to go ahead and drag on that little rotate icon, the X rotate icon like so, in order to move the light to the other side of the scene. And then I'll also drag, if I can there, I'll go ahead and drag that blue rotate icon in order to train the light through the windows onto the bed. And that's still not exactly what I'm looking for, so I would possibly drag this red rotate gadget here in the 3D widget. Problem is, it's not working for me because Moonlight became suddenly and mysteriously deselected here inside my list, so I'll go ahead and click on it again and then drag the widget like so in order to move things around. And I would keep going back and forth. The Y gadget, the green one, isn't really going to do you any good. As you may recall, that just spins the light around in its own little circle. But tell you what I'm going to do is enter some numerical values just to save us a little bit of time here. So I'll click on Moonlight to make it active, and then I'll go up to the options bar, and I'm going to select that Y value, and I'm going to change it to -165, and then I'll select the X value, change it to 35, and then I'll click on the Z value there and change it to -58, so that we get the light coming in more or less the right direction. Let's go ahead and zoom back into the scene by switching back to the camera tool, and then up here in the options bar, click the View pop-up menu and choose Home Position to go back to that standard position we've been viewing. And then, just to get a sense of what's going on here, I'll click on Scene in order to make it active, switch back to my rectangular marquee tool so I'm not seeing all that 3D folder all on screen, and I'll change the quality setting to Ray Trace Draft just so I can get an early sense of what's going on here. Now, we're going to accelerate the process, of course, so that you can get a better sense of what's going on that much faster. It will take a while, though, and the more objects we add to the scene and the more lighting elements, the more time it's going to take Photoshop to render. But what I want you to notice here is we do have a light being cast through the window onto the top of the bed and onto this end table as well, and onto the light shade. And then we have this big, huge swath of light up here in the upper left corner of the screen. That gives me a good enough idea of what's going on, so I'll press the Escape key. Let's hide the 3D panel for a moment. You can see over here in the reflection in the wall, this mirrored wall, you can see this window lighting, this checkerboard. Well, what's happening is light's going through the window onto the side of the bed that we can't see over there on that right-hand side if we were looking at the bed from the footboard. And that is light that's being cast onto the bedspread over here on the head side of the bed and the foot side of the bed as well. And then it's dissipating onto the floor a little bit too. So I just want you to have a sense of what you're seeing there. We're also seeing the reflection of the light from the end table on the floor as well. The big problems with what we're seeing are the big swath of light in the upper left-hand corner. That's because our scene, as you may recall from the previous chapter, our scene has no ceiling. The ceiling is set to 0% opacity. And furthermore, see this little band of light right there? Well, that's some light that's being cast all the way over on the far right-hand side of the scene. We can't see it. It's way over this way. However, it's being reflected in that wall, and that's a problem. And so we're going to have to add a ceiling to the scene and eventually a far wall as well in order to cut that light. And we'll be creating that ceiling and adjusting our moonlight in the next exercise.